It was December 11th, 2025 at 2:47 a.m. when a suffocating panic attack, the kind that makes your chest feel like it's collapsing inward, drove me to the coastal cliffs of Big Sur, and there, surrounded by the thunderous percussion of waves exploding against jagged rocks 200 feet below, the salt spray rising like incense in the moonlight, the wind howling through the cypress trees that clung impossibly to the cliff face, Jesus materialized beside me in a way that made every cell in my body understand that our addiction to scrolling is not just wasting our time, it's actively preventing the very breakthrough he's been trying to give us for months, maybe years. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. And I need you to understand something right now, before we go any further. If you're seeing this, if something made you stop scrolling long enough to read these words, it's not an accident. It's not the algorithm. It's not random. You've been selected for what I'm about to share, and I'm terrified, absolutely terrified, because what Jesus showed me on that cliff changes everything about how we understand our relationship with our phones, our feeds, our constant need for the next hit of digital dopamine. But before I tell you what happened, before I describe how Jesus literally took my phone from my hand and hurled it into the Pacific Ocean, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. I need you to comment below right now with a prayer request. Not later, not after you've finished reading, right now. Because what I'm about to share with you requires that level of commitment. If you can't give me 30 seconds to type out what you're struggling with, then you're not ready for what comes next. And that's okay, you can scroll away right now. But if you're hungry, if you're desperate, if you're tired of the same cycle of promising yourself, you'll spend less time on your phone and then looking up 3 hours later wondering where your day went, then comment below, Jesus, I need breakthrough in your specific situation. Do it now. I'll wait. Okay, if you just commented, you're in the right place. And I need you to do one more thing. Subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the numbers, God knows I don't, but because YouTube's algorithm is actively suppressing this kind of content. They don't want you to see messages that challenge your addiction to their platform. They don't want you to break free. So when you subscribe, you're telling the algorithm, I'm choosing truth over entertainment. I'm choosing breakthrough over distraction. And hit that notification bell, because this message is part 1 of 4. And if you miss the next parts, you won't get the full revelation Jesus gave me. Now, some of you know me. I'm Jonathan. I played Jesus in The Chosen, a role that absolutely wrecked my life in the best and worst ways possible. Because when you spend that much time studying the Gospels, when you're on set literally embodying the words of Christ, you can't help but be changed. But you also can't help but feel the crushing weight of hypocrisy when you spend 3 hours portraying the Son of God teaching about prayer and presence, and then you go back to your trailer and spend the next 2 hours scrolling through Instagram, numb, disconnected, desperate for something you can't even name. That's what led me to that cliff. Let me paint you the picture, because the setting matters. God chose that location specifically for what he was about to show me. The drive from Los Angeles to Big Sur takes about 5 hours, but I did it in 4, racing up Highway 1 in the middle of the night because I couldn't breathe in my house anymore. You know that feeling? When the walls close in and every possession you own feels like it's accusing you? When your phone sits there on the nightstand, glowing, buzzing, demanding, and you feel like a slave to it, but you can't stop reaching for it? I'd spent the entire day, 14 hours, scrolling, not working, not praying, not spending time with my family, just scrolling. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, back to Twitter, check the news, back to Instagram, watch a reel, then another, then another. And somewhere around 2 a.m., I looked at my screen time report and saw 14 hours, 23 minutes, 14 hours. I'd been awake for 16 hours, which meant I'd spent nearly every conscious moment that day staring at a screen, and something broke inside me. So I got in my car and drove. No destination, no plan, just drove. And somehow, though I know now it wasn't somehow, it was divine appointment, I ended up at this pullout on Highway 1, where a narrow trail leads out to a promontory, a finger of rock jutting into the Pacific. The moon was 3 days past full, bright enough to cast shadows. The wind was coming from the northwest, steady at maybe 20 knots, strong enough that I had to lean into it as I walked the trail. The cypress trees, those gnarled ancient sentinels that line these cliffs, were swaying and creaking, and the sound, you have to understand the sound. It wasn't just wind. It was like the earth itself was breathing, this deep rhythmic inhalation and exhalation that matched the waves below. The waves. God, the waves. This wasn't some gentle California beach scene. This was violence. This was power. Every 7 seconds, another wave would detonate against the rocks below with a boom you could feel in your sternum, and then the spray would rise, 30, 40 feet in the air, and the wind would catch it and fling it upward, so even though I was 200 feet above the ocean, I was getting hit with this fine salt mist that coated my face, my hands, my phone screen, my phone. I'd taken it out of my pocket. Of course I had. To take a picture. To post. Can't sleep, drove to Big Sur, processing some heavy stuff. I could already see the comments. So brave. Thank you for being vulnerable. This spoke to me. The little dopamine hits I'd trained myself to crave, but my hands were shaking too hard to type. And that's when he appeared. I need you to understand, I'm not someone who sees visions regularly. I'm not that guy. I don't have angels visiting me every Tuesday. The Chosen is a job, a role I was blessed to play, but it doesn't make me special or more spiritual than anyone else. I struggle, I doubt, I fail constantly. But this was undeniable. Jesus didn't fade in or materialize gradually. One moment I was alone, and the next, he was standing beside me on that promontory, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching, and he was looking out at the ocean with this expression I can only describe as profound sadness, mixed with fierce determination. He was wearing simple clothes. I remember being struck by how practical they were, like actual first-century working clothes, not the clean pressed robes we use in The Chosen, and they were whipping around in the wind. His hair was being blown back from his face, his feet were bare on the rock, and he was crying, not sobbing, not dramatic, just tears streaming down his face, catching the moonlight. And when the salt spray hit us both, I couldn't tell where the ocean ended and his tears began. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My phone was still in my hand, still glowing, and Jesus looked down at it, then back up at me, and he said, "How many hours today, Jonathan?" His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the wind like a blade. I tried to answer, but my throat had closed up. How many hours did you give to the endless scroll? How many hours did you give to strangers' opinions? How many hours did you give to manufactured outrage and curated lives and videos of people you'll never meet doing things you'll never do? I couldn't answer. The number, 14 hours, 23 minutes, was burned into my brain. And how many minutes did you give to me? The question hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, and Jesus reached out and steadied me, his hand on my shoulder, and the touch was real, solid, warm despite the cold wind. I gave you, I stammered. I prayed this morning, I think. I read a verse. You read a verse on your phone, he said, and there was no accusation in his voice, which somehow made it worse. You read a Bible verse on the same device that then consumed 14 hours of your one and only December 11th, 2025. You will never get this day back, Jonathan. It's gone, spent, and you traded it for nothing. It's not nothing, I protested weakly. I was staying informed, staying connected. Connected? And now there was fire in his voice. Connected? You spent 14 hours today and you didn't have a single real conversation. You didn't look into anyone's eyes. You didn't touch another human being, except to push past your daughter when she asked you to play with her because you were busy. Do you remember that? Do you remember what you were doing that was so important? I did remember. God help me, I remembered. I'd been watching a video about whether or not some celebrity couple was breaking up, people I'd never met, people who didn't know I existed, and I'd told my daughter, my precious 8-year-old daughter, "Not now, Daddy's busy." The shame hit me like the waves hitting the rocks below, crushing, relentless. Jesus turned back to the ocean, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer but somehow more urgent. Do you know what I've been trying to tell my people? Do you know what message I've been shouting into the wind while they stare at screens? I shook my head. Your breakthrough is in the pause. Your healing is in the stillness. Your purpose is in the presence. But you can't hear me over the noise. You can't see me through the screen. You can't feel me when your hands are always holding glass and metal instead of being open and empty and ready to receive. A massive wave hit below us, bigger than the others, and the boom was like thunder. The spray rose up so high it drenched us both, and I gasped at the cold shock of it. Jesus didn't flinch. I need you to see something, he said. I need you to see what I see when I look at my children in this generation. And then he touched my forehead, and the vision hit me. I saw millions of people, hundreds of millions, all staring down at glowing rectangles, alone in bedrooms, alone in crowds, sitting next to loved ones, but completely disconnected. and above each person, I could see what looked like a golden thread stretching upward into light, but the threads were thin, fraying, some completely broken, and I understood. These were connection points to God, divine appointments, moments where He was trying to break through with a word, a warning, a blessing, a call. But they were all being missed, because everyone was scrolling. I saw a woman whose thread was pulsing with gold light. God was trying to tell her something urgent about her son, but she was watching makeup tutorials. The thread pulsed once, twice, 3 times, and then dimmed. I saw a man whose thread was practically vibrating with energy. God was about to reveal His purpose, the thing he'd been created for, but he was arguing with strangers on Twitter about politics. The thread vibrated for maybe 60 seconds, and then went still. I saw a teenage girl whose thread was glowing so bright it should have been impossible to ignore. God was trying to stop her from making a decision that would alter the course of her entire life, but she was watching TikTok dance videos. The thread glowed, pulsed, flashed desperately, and then went dark. And I saw myself on my phone for 14 hours while my thread sat there, waiting, patient, growing dimmer with each hour until it was barely visible. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The vision released me and I stumbled backward, gasping. Jesus caught me again. "This is what I see," He said quietly. "Every day, every hour. Billions of golden threads connecting earth to heaven, and almost all of them ignored because my people are scrolling." I was fully crying now, ugly crying, the kind where you can't catch your breath. "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you warn us?" And Jesus, I'll never forget this, Jesus actually laughed, but it was the saddest sound I'd ever heard. "Jonathan, my son, I've been telling you, I've been screaming it. Be still and know that I am God. Come away with me to a quiet place. Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. I've been saying it for 2,000 years. The words haven't changed, but now the distraction has a name, scrolling, and it's so much more effective than anything Satan has ever devised before." He turned to face me fully, and his eyes, I can't describe them. All I can say is that being seen by Jesus is like being completely known and completely loved at the exact same moment, and it's overwhelming. "I didn't bring you here just to show you the problem," he said. "I brought you here to commission you. You're going to share this message. You're going to tell my people, stop scrolling. Give me 1 minute. Just 1 minute of undistracted, phone down, eyes up, hands open attention, 1 minute, and watch what I do with it." "1 minute?" I said. That's all?" "That's everything," he replied. "Because here's what they don't understand. The issue isn't that they need to pray for 3 hours a day. The issue is that they can't stop scrolling for 60 seconds. They're so addicted, so enslaved, that 1 minute of stillness feels impossible. So we start there, 1 minute. And I promise you, Jonathan, I promise, when they give me 1 minute of true presence, I will shift their entire life." The wind had picked up even more, and now it was howling around us, and the cypress trees were bending almost horizontal, and the waves were crashing with such force that the ground beneath us was trembling. Jesus held out His hand. "Give it to me." I knew what He meant. I looked down at my phone, still glowing in my hand, still showing my Instagram feed, still promising another hit of dopamine if I just scroll one more time. "I can't," I whispered. "I need it. For work, for family, for—" "You need it?" Jesus interrupted. "Or you're addicted to it?" The question hung in the air between us. "Jonathan, I'm not asking you to never use technology again. I'm asking you to stop being a slave to it. I'm asking you to prove, right here, right now, that you can choose me over the scroll." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "What if I miss something important?" I said, and even as the words left my mouth, I heard how pathetic they sounded. Jesus smiled, and it was gentle and fierce at the same time. "What if you miss something important?" he repeated. "My son, you've been missing the most important thing for months. You've been missing me. You've been missing your purpose. You've been missing divine appointments because you were too busy watching strangers live their lives while yours passed you by." He held out His hand again. "Give it to me." And something broke inside me. Broke open, actually. And I placed my phone in His hand. Jesus looked at it for a long moment, and I swear I saw the screen flicker through all my most used apps, like He was reviewing my digital life, and then He pulled His arm back and threw my phone, my $1,200 iPhone, out into the darkness, and I heard it splash into the Pacific Ocean 200 feet below. I gasped, actually gasped. My first instinct was to be angry, to protest, but before I could say anything, Jesus said, "Peace, be still." And immediately, the panic I'd been feeling, the anxiety, the need to check notifications, the FOMO, all of it, stopped. Just stopped. It was like someone had turned off a noise I didn't even know I was hearing, like a frequency that had been buzzing in the background of my consciousness for years suddenly went silent, and in that silence, I heard God, not audibly, not like Jesus standing next to me speaking, but that still small voice that I'd forgotten existed, that voice that says, "This is the way, walk in it," that voice that whispers truth and purpose and calling. I heard it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I actually heard the voice of God, and I collapsed onto the rock and wept, because I realized what I'd been missing. I realized what I'd traded for scrolling. I realized that I'd been so busy consuming content about God that I'd stopped actually spending time with God. Jesus sat down beside me, just sat right there on the cold stone, and put his arm around my shoulders, and we sat like that for I don't know how long. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been an hour. Time felt different, elastic, sacred. Finally, he spoke again. "Tomorrow night, I need you to come back here. Same time. There's more you need to see. What I showed you tonight was just the beginning. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you what happens to people who ignore this message. And the next night," he paused and his face grew serious. "The next night, I'm going to show you what's coming, what's about to happen to those who refuse to disconnect from the world's noise and reconnect with me." "What do you mean, what's coming?" I asked, but he was already standing. "Tomorrow night, 2:47 a.m., this spot. Don't be late. And Jonathan." He looked down at me with an intensity that made me feel like I was the only person in the universe. "No phone. You don't need it anymore. You need me." And then he was gone. Just gone. One moment he was there, solid and real and present, and the next I was alone on the cliff with the wind and the waves and the moonlight. I sat there until sunrise, which came around 6:15 a.m., nearly 4 hours of just sitting, being, praying, listening. And I'm telling you, I heard more from God in those 4 hours than I'd heard in the previous 4 months of church services and podcasts and Bible app devotionals combined, not because church or podcasts or devotionals are bad, but because I'd been consuming content about God instead of communing with God. There's a difference, a massive, life-altering difference. And here's what I need you to understand, what I need you to really hear. You're not supposed to be reading this right now. You're supposed to be scrolling. You're supposed to be consuming the next video, the next post, the next dopamine hit. The algorithm doesn't want you here. This message is too dangerous, because if you actually stop scrolling and give God 1 minute, one real, undistracted minute, everything changes. Your breakthrough is waiting in the pause. Your healing is waiting in the stillness. Your purpose is waiting in the presence. But you have to stop scrolling to access it. I drove home that morning without a phone, and let me tell you, it was terrifying. I kept reaching for my pocket, phantom vibrations making me think I'd gotten a text. I kept wanting to check something, look something up, post about what had happened. The addiction was real, still is real. I'm not standing here telling you I'm healed and perfect. I'm telling you I'm aware. And awareness is the first step. When I got home, my wife saw my face and knew something had happened. "Where's your phone?" she asked. "Jesus threw it in the ocean," I said, and before she could respond, I added, "and it was the greatest gift he could have given me. Listen to me. I'm coming back to this cliff tonight, 2:47 a.m., and Jesus is going to show me more, reveal more, and tomorrow I'm going to share part 2 of this message with you. But I need you to do something between now and then. I need you to give God 1 minute, not after you finish scrolling through 10 more videos, not later today when you're less busy. Right now, as soon as you finish reading this, put your phone down or close your laptop or turn off your tablet, whatever device you're using, and just be still for 1 minute, 60 seconds. No music, no podcast playing in the background, just silence, just you and God. And in that minute, say this: God, I've been scrolling when I should have been seeking. I've been consuming when I should have been communing. I give you this minute. Show me what you want to show me. Tell me what you want to tell me. I'm here, I'm present, I'm listening. That's it. 1 minute. And I promise you on everything I hold sacred, if you give him that minute with genuine openness, he will show up. He will speak. He will move. Your life is about to shift, but only if you stop scrolling. I'll be back tomorrow with part 2. Until then, comment below. I gave God 1 minute, and here's what happened. I want to hear your encounters. I want to hear your breakthroughs. And if you can't give him 1 minute, if reading that request made you anxious or resistant or angry, then you need this message more than anyone, because that resistance isn't coming from you. It's coming from the enemy who knows that 1 minute of true connection with God will destroy months or years of his work, keeping you distracted. The clock is ticking. You have 30 days from today, that's January 10th, 2026, to make a decision. To choose presence over scrolling, to choose breakthrough over distraction, to choose God over the feed. 30 days. After that, I can't tell you what happens. I don't know yet. Jesus is going to show me tonight, but I can tell you this. You were marked to see this message. You were chosen to receive this warning, and what you do next will determine whether you access the breakthrough that's been waiting for you or whether you scroll past it like you've scrolled past everything else. Choose wisely. I'll see you tomorrow night. Same cliff, same time, same Jesus with more to reveal. Until then, stop scrolling. Give him 1 minute. Your life is about to shift. The temperature dropped to 43 degrees by the time I arrived back at the cliff at 2:39 a.m. on December 12th, 8 minutes early because I wasn't about to be late for an appointment with Jesus. The wind had shifted from northwest to straight west, coming off the ocean in gusts that had to be 30 knots or more, strong enough that I had to grip the twisted trunk of a cypress tree to steady myself as I made my way down the narrow path to the promontory. The moon had waned slightly, but still cast enough light to paint the wave crests silver as they rolled toward the rocks below. The sound was different tonight, less percussive, more of a sustained roar, like the ocean itself was trying to tell me something. I'd spent the previous day in a fog, not a bad fog, more like I was moving through a different atmosphere than everyone else. Without my phone, I was suddenly aware of everything I'd been missing. The way my daughter's face lit up when I actually sat down and played dolls with her for 45 minutes without checking notifications. The way my wife's shoulders relaxed when we had dinner and I wasn't scrolling under the table. The way I could actually hear birds in the morning instead of immediately reaching for a screen. But I'd also felt the withdrawal, actual physical withdrawal. My hands would shake. I'd feel phantom vibrations in my pocket every few minutes. I'd think of something and my first instinct was to Google it, and then I'd remember, no phone. And that moment of remembering came with a spike of anxiety every single time. The addiction was deeper than I'd realized. It had roots in my nervous system, my habits, my sense of identity. Who was I without the constant validation of likes and comments? What was I supposed to do with 10 free minutes if I couldn't scroll? These questions haunted me all day, until finally it was time to drive back to the cliff. I stood on that finger of rock, the same spot where Jesus had thrown my phone into the ocean, and I waited. The mist was heavier tonight, a low fog bank rolling in from the sea, swallowing the lower cliffs and creeping up toward where I stood. The air tasted like salt and kelp. My jacket was already soaked through from the spray. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the temperature dropped another 10 degrees in an instant, and my breath became visible, and Jesus was there. Not beside me this time. He was standing on a boulder about 15 feet away, slightly higher, so he was looking down at me, and his expression was harder than it had been the night before. Not angry, but resolute, like a doctor about to deliver a difficult diagnosis. "You came back," he said, and there was something in his voice, approval mixed with sorrow. "Of course I came back," I said, my teeth already chattering from the sudden cold. "You told me to." "Most don't," he replied. "I tell them to come back, to go deeper, to press in, and they scroll away." He descended from the boulder with impossible grace, landing on the wet rock without a sound. "Did you give me 1 minute yesterday, after you went home?" "I gave you more than 1 minute," I said. "I gave you hours. I didn't have my phone, so That's not what I asked." His eyes locked onto mine. "Did you give me 1 minute, intentional, focused, undistracted presence? Or did you just have extra time because I removed your distraction?" The distinction hit me like a slap. He was right. I'd had more time, yes, but had I been intentional about spending it with him? Or had I just existed in the absence of scrolling? I faltered. I tried, I prayed, Jonathan. He stepped closer. "I'm not condemning you, I'm teaching you. There's a difference between having time and stewarding time, between absence of distraction and presence with me. This is what my people don't understand. They think if they just delete the app or turn off notifications, they've solved the problem. But the deeper issue is this: they've forgotten how to be present. They've lost the ability to sit in stillness and encounter me there. He gestured to the ocean, the fog, the cliffs. Why do you think I brought you here? To this specific place? I looked around, the wild, untamed beauty of it, the raw power of the waves, the ancient trees clinging to impossible angles on the cliff face. Because it's powerful? Beautiful? Because it demands presence, Jesus said. You can't scroll here. You can't be half present here. If you're not fully aware, fully engaged, you'll walk right off this cliff. This landscape requires your attention, and that's exactly what relationship with me requires. Attention, presence, the willingness to be fully here, fully now, fully engaged. Another massive wave hit below, and the entire promontory shuddered. The spray rose up and engulfed us both, and I gasped at the cold shock of it, but Jesus didn't even blink. Tonight I need to show you something harder, he said. Last night I showed you what you're missing when you scroll. Tonight I need to show you what you're becoming. What do you mean, what I'm becoming? Come here. He walked to the very edge of the cliff, where one more step would mean a 200-foot fall to the rocks and churning water below. I followed reluctantly, vertigo already making my head spin. Jesus pointed down at the waves. Watch. I watched. For maybe 30 seconds there was just the normal pattern, waves rolling in, crashing, receding, but then the water began to glow, this phosphorescent blue-green light, and I could see shapes forming in the foam and spray. They were people, hundreds of them, thousands, all hunched over glowing rectangles, scrolling, and with each scroll they became less defined, their features blurring, their bodies becoming translucent, until they were almost ghost-like, barely there. What is this? I whispered. This is what scrolling does to the soul, Jesus said quietly. Every hour spent consuming instead of creating, observing instead of engaging, watching instead of living, it makes you less real, less present, less you. You're fading, Jonathan. All of you are fading, becoming ghosts in your own lives, watching everyone else live while you scroll past your own purpose. As I watched, one of the translucent figures completely disappeared, just dissolved into nothing, then another, then another. Where did they go? I asked, horror creeping into my voice. They wasted it, their one life. They reached the end and realized they'd spent it scrolling, and there's nothing left. No legacy, no impact, no depth, just a record of what they consumed, not what they created or who they became. I felt sick, literally nauseous, because I could see myself in those fading figures, could see the trajectory I'd been on. But they were just scrolling, I protested weakly. It's not like they were doing something evil. They weren't hurting anyone. Jesus turned to me, and his face, oh God, his face was filled with such grief it almost broke me. Jonathan, do you know what Satan's greatest victory is in this generation? It's not that he got people to do evil things. It's that he got them to do nothing, to waste the precious, irreplaceable gift of time on absolutely nothing, to scroll through their one life while their purpose dies unlived, their calling dies unanswered, their potential dies unrealized. He grabbed my shoulders, and his grip was strong, urgent. Don't you understand? I didn't die on a cross so you could spend 14 hours a day watching strangers dance on TikTok. I didn't rise from the grave so you could scroll through carefully curated lies on Instagram. I didn't conquer death so you could waste your life in a digital fog. His voice echoed off the cliffs, and the fog seemed to pulse with each word. I came to give you life, abundant life, purpose, calling, destiny, but you can't access any of it while your face is in a screen. He released my shoulders and turned back to the ocean. The glowing figures were still fading, disappearing one by one. Let me show you something else, he said, and his voice was calmer now but somehow more intense. Let me show you what I see when I look at a scroller. He touched my forehead again, and another vision hit me, but this one was different, darker, more oppressive. I saw a woman, maybe 30 years old, sitting on her couch at 11 p.m., scrolling through her phone. She'd been scrolling for 3 hours. I could somehow sense this, see the timeline of her evening. She'd had intentions when she sat down. She was going to pray, going to read her Bible, going to work on that dream God had planted in her heart about starting a ministry. But first, she'd thought, just 5 minutes on Instagram to unwind. 3 hours later, she was still scrolling. And I could see what she couldn't. Her young son had tried to get her attention 4 times that evening. 4 times he'd brought her pictures he'd drawn, questions he had, stories he wanted to share, and 4 times she'd said, "Not now, honey. Mommy's busy." She wasn't busy, she was scrolling, and I watched as her son, a beautiful 6-year-old with curly hair and hopeful eyes, slowly gave up trying, slowly learned that Mommy's phone was more important than him, slowly began to internalize the lie that he wasn't worth her attention. The vision fast-forwarded. I saw him at 13, distant and angry, spending all his time in his room on his own devices because that's what he learned. Connection wasn't real, presence wasn't available, everyone was always somewhere else, living in their screens. I saw him at 19, depressed and isolated, unable to form real relationships because he'd never witnessed one modeled. I saw him at 25, repeating the exact same pattern with his own girlfriend, scrolling while she tried to connect, building walls of digital distraction because it was the only relationship style he'd ever known. "No," I gasped. "Stop, please stop." The vision shifted. Now I saw a man, maybe 45, scrolling through news feeds and political content. He'd been a youth pastor, passionate about reaching young people, but over the last 5 years he'd gotten pulled deeper and deeper into online outrage. Every article about cultural decay, every video about the end times, every post about political corruption, he consumed it all, getting more angry, more fearful, more convinced that the world was ending and there was nothing he could do. And I could see what he couldn't. 3 teenagers in his youth group were dealing with suicidal thoughts. 3 kids who desperately needed someone to notice them, to speak life over them, to be present with them. But their youth pastor was too busy scrolling through doom and outrage to notice. The vision showed me one of those kids, a 16-year-old girl writing a suicide note. And I saw the golden thread, the one Jesus had shown me the night before, stretching from heaven to that youth pastor, pulsing with urgent light. God was trying to tell him, "Call Sarah, right now, she needs you. Call her." But the youth pastor was scrolling, arguing in a comment section about vaccine mandates, and he never felt the prompting. The girl took her life 3 days later, and at her funeral, the youth pastor wondered why God hadn't warned him, hadn't given him a sign. But he had. The sign had been clear, urgent, undeniable, but it couldn't compete with the scroll. "Please," I was begging now, tears streaming down my face. "I can't see anymore. I can't." The vision released me, and I collapsed onto the wet rock, sobbing. Jesus knelt beside me, and when he spoke, his voice was so gentle, it hurt worse than any rebuke could have. "This is happening right now, Jonathan, not someday, not in some hypothetical future. Right now, while people scroll, life and death moments are passing by. Divine appointments are being missed, purposes are dying, relationships are crumbling, children are being neglected, callings are being suffocated. And at the end, they'll stand before me and say, 'Lord, why didn't you use me? Why didn't you speak to me? Why didn't you give me purpose?' And I'll have to show them the thousands of times I tried, the thousands of promptings they missed, the thousands of divine appointments they scrolled right past." He helped me sit up, and I noticed that my hands were bleeding. I'd been clenching them so hard my nails had cut into my palms. "I don't want this," I said hoarsely. "I don't want to be that person. I don't want to miss." "I know," Jesus said. "That's why I called you here. That's why I'm showing you this. Because you're going to warn my people. You're going to tell them, stop scrolling, give me 1 minute, just 1 minute, and in that minute I'll show you what you're about to miss. I'll alert you to the divine appointment you're scrolling past. I'll reconnect you to your purpose." He stood and pulled me to my feet. The fog had grown thicker, and now we were completely engulfed in it, a white void with just the 2 of us and the sound of waves crashing somewhere below. "Do you know what happens in 1 minute of true presence?" Jesus asked. "Let me show you the contrast." He waved his hand, and the fog in front of us cleared, forming a window, and I saw another vision. But this one was completely different. I saw a man, maybe 50 years old, sitting in his backyard at dawn. He'd set his phone inside the house. He was just sitting, hands open on his knees, eyes closed, breathing, 1 minute of stillness. And I watched as that golden thread above him, which had been dim and thin, suddenly flared with light, and the man's eyes opened, and he gasped, and he said, "Oh my God, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to do." God had just downloaded a complete vision for a ministry that would reach thousands. 1 minute of presence, and the entire trajectory of his life shifted. The vision changed. Now I saw a woman, mid-30s, sitting in her car in a parking lot. She just picked up her phone to scroll, then stopped herself. 1 minute, she whispered. God, I give you 1 minute. She put the phone in her purse and just sat there, breathing, present. And 30 seconds in, she felt a prompting. Go back into the store. Buy coffee for the cashier. Tell her I see her. The woman almost dismissed it. It seemed random, awkward, but she obeyed. And when she gave the coffee to the cashier, the young woman burst into tears. How did you know? She sobbed. I was just praying. I was just asking God if he sees me, if he cares, if I matter. And then you... That 1 minute of presence, that one moment of obedience to a prompting, saved that cashier's life. She'd been planning to overdose that night, but now she knew. God saw her. The vision changed again and again, showing me moment after moment where 1 minute of presence, just 60 seconds of putting down the phone and being available to God, created massive impact. A father who felt prompted to go check on his daughter and interrupted a predator's online grooming. A businesswoman who received a download about a product that would create jobs for hundreds. A teacher who got a word of knowledge about a student's home situation and was able to intervene before abuse escalated. 1 minute, 60 seconds. That's all it took for heaven to invade earth. Do you see? Jesus asked as the vision faded and we were alone in the fog again. Do you see the difference? Every moment you're scrolling is a moment you're unavailable for this, for divine interruption, for Holy Spirit prompting, for purpose. I nodded, unable to speak. And here's what breaks my heart, Jesus continued, and I heard the tears in his voice. My people think they don't hear from me. They complain that I'm silent, distant, that I don't speak to them like I did to people in the Bible. But Jonathan, I'm speaking constantly. I'm sending promptings every single day. But they can't hear me over the noise. They can't feel the prompting when their hands are always holding a phone. They can't see the divine appointment when their eyes are locked on a screen. He stepped closer and the fog swirled around us both, and his next words were so quiet I had to strain to hear them over the waves. I'm not asking them to become monks. I'm not asking them to abandon technology. I'm asking them to prove they can give me 1 minute, just one. Because if they can't give me 1 minute, they don't have faith. They have addiction. If they can't put the phone down for 60 seconds, they don't have a tool. They have a master. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. How many times had I said just 1 more minute to my daughter while I finished scrolling? But I couldn't give God that same 1 minute. There's more, Jesus said, and his tone shifted into something I can only describe as prophetic urgency. There's something coming that I need to show you tomorrow night, something that will make the choice undeniable, but tonight, I need you to understand the stakes. He placed both hands on my shoulders and looked into my eyes with such intensity, I couldn't have looked away if I tried. In 30 days, by January 10th, there will be a separation. Those who have learned to hear my voice in the stillness will be positioned for what's coming. Those who are still slaves to the scroll will miss it entirely. And the difference between those two groups won't be intelligence or theology or how long they've been saved. It will be this. Can they give me 1 minute? What's coming? I asked. What do you mean, a separation? Tomorrow night, he said. Tomorrow I'll show you. But for now, I need you to share what you've seen. I need you to warn my people. Your life is being stolen one scroll at a time. Your purpose is dying in the feed. Your relationships are crumbling while you watch strangers' highlight reels, and time is running out to change course. The fog began to clear, and I could see the first hints of pre-dawn light on the eastern horizon. Jesus took a step back. There's a reason I'm doing this here, he said, gesturing to the wild landscape around us. Nature doesn't scroll, the ocean doesn't post, the trees don't check notifications, they just are, present, fully engaged with the moment. This is what I want for my people, not to abandon the digital world, but to remember how to be present, to remember that real life happens in the unmediated moment. He turned to walk away, then paused and looked back. Tomorrow night, 2:47 a.m., same place. What I show you will be harder than anything you've seen so far. It will be the judgment side of this message, the consequences, the warning. Are you ready for that? I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway. Good, he said. And Jonathan? Between now and then, I want you to notice something. Notice how many people you encounter who can't be present because they're scrolling. Notice how many conversations are interrupted by phones. Notice how many moments are missed because someone was capturing it instead of experiencing it. Notice, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then he was gone, and I was alone on the cliff as dawn began to break over the Santa Lucia Mountains behind me. I stayed for another hour, watching the sun rise over the landscape, and I did what he said. I gave him more than 1 minute. I gave him 60 minutes. And in that hour, he showed me so much. Little things, quiet things, impressions about people I needed to call, amends I needed to make, directions for my family, insights into scripture I'd read 100 times but never truly understood. 1 hour. After years of giving my phone 14 hours a day, I gave God 1 hour, and it was the most productive, prophetic, purpose-filled hour I'd had in months. When I finally drove home, the morning traffic was building on Highway 1, and I played a game at every stoplight, count how many drivers were looking at their phones instead of being present. At one intersection, I counted 9 cars. All 9 drivers were scrolling at a red light for 60 seconds. They couldn't even give God the time it took for a stoplight to change. And I thought, we're so lost. We're so addicted. We need an intervention. This message is that intervention. Listen to me. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, this is extreme. This is over the top. It's not that serious. It's just scrolling. But that's the lie. That's the exact lie that keeps you enslaved. It's just 5 minutes. It's just while I'm waiting. It's just to relax. It's just... And meanwhile, your purpose is dying. Your relationships are deteriorating. Your ability to hear God is atrophying, and you don't even notice because it happens one scroll at a time. Here's what I need you to do before I share part 3 tomorrow. I need you to set a timer for 1 minute right now, 60 seconds. Put your phone down or close your laptop, whatever device you're on, and give God 1 minute of undistracted presence. And in that minute, ask him, what am I missing? What are you trying to tell me? What divine appointment am I scrolling past? Then sit in silence and listen. Don't fill the space with worship music or a podcast or a Bible app. Just silence, just you and God. And I promise, I absolutely promise, he will show you something. He will tell you something. He will shift something. But you have to actually do it. You can't just nod and say, that's a good idea, and then keep scrolling, because that proves the point. That proves you're addicted. That proves the scroll is your master, not your tool. So do it, right now. Before you scroll away, before you swipe to the next video, before you forget this conviction, 1 minute, and then comment below, I gave God 1 minute and he showed me. Tell me what happened. Tell me what he revealed. Tell me how that 1 minute changed your perspective. Because tomorrow night, or rather later tonight, since it's already dawn, I'm going back to that cliff, and Jesus is going to show me what happens to those who ignore this message, the judgment, the consequences, the separation that's coming, and I'll share it all in part 3. But between now and then, you have a choice. Will you give God 1 minute, or will you scroll past this message like you scroll past everything else? Choose wisely. The clock is ticking. 29 days left until January 10th. 29 days until the separation. 29 days to learn to hear his voice in the stillness. Stop scrolling. Give him 1 minute. Your life is about to shift. I didn't go home after the second encounter. I couldn't. Something in me knew that if I left that cliff, if I stepped back into normal life even for a few hours, I would talk myself out of returning. I would rationalize. I would domesticate what Jesus had shown me. Turn it into something manageable, something that didn't require such radical obedience. So I stayed. I moved my car to a safer pullout about a quarter mile up Highway 1, reclined the seat, and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those translucent figures dissolving into nothing, their lives consumed by the scroll. I saw that 16-year-old girl writing her suicide note while her youth pastor argued in a comment section. I saw the golden threads, thousands of them, millions of them, pulsing with divine urgency while people stared at screens, oblivious. Around 11 a.m., a highway patrol officer tapped on my window. I must have looked like hell, unshaven, red-eyed, wild-haired from the salt wind. He asked if I was okay, if I needed help. And I almost told him everything. Almost said, Jesus is meeting me on that cliff at 2:47 a.m. and showing me visions of what's about to happen to this generation. But I knew how that would sound. So I just told him I was a writer working on a project, needed the inspiration of the coast, and he nodded. Apparently eccentric writers camping in their cars isn't unusual in Big Sur, and told me to be safe. Be safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to receive a prophetic warning from Jesus Christ himself about judgment coming to a scroll-addicted generation, and this officer was worried about my physical safety. I spent the day walking the cliff trails, praying, fasting, not because I'm some super spiritual giant, but because I was too nervous to eat. The wind had picked up throughout the day, and by afternoon it was howling, bending the cypress trees into tortured shapes. The ocean had turned from blue-green to gunmetal gray, and the waves were massive, 20-footers, their crests being torn off by the wind and flung back as spray. A storm was coming. I could feel it in the air, that electric charge that precedes violent weather. The temperature was dropping fast. By 6 p.m., it was already down to 38 degrees, and the fog was rolling in again, thicker than before, swallowing the coastline in both directions. I sat in my car and watched darkness fall, and I'll admit something to you. I was terrified. Not of Jesus, never of Jesus, but of what he was going to show me. The first night had been revelation. Here's what you're missing. The second night had been conviction. Here's what you're becoming. And tonight was going to be judgment, consequences, warning, the or else part of the message. And I didn't want to see it, didn't want to know, because once you know, you can't unknow. Once you see, you're responsible for what you've seen. But at 2:30 a.m. on December 13th, I got out of my car and walked back down that trail one more time. The wind so strong I literally had to crawl the last 20 feet to the promontory, gripping rocks and roots to keep from being blown off the path. The temperature had dropped to 31 degrees, below freezing, and my breath wasn't just visible, it was crystallizing, tiny ice particles forming in the air and swirling away in the wind. The fog was so thick I couldn't see more than 15 feet in any direction. The ocean below was invisible, but I could hear it, a constant roar punctuated by booms that shook the ground beneath me. This wasn't the same sacred, beautiful setting from the previous 2 nights. This was violent, hostile. This landscape was screaming. I made it to the promontory and hunkered down behind a boulder, trying to shield myself from the worst of the wind. My watch said 2:44 a.m., 3 minutes. And then, with no warning, no gradual appearance, Jesus was standing on the highest point of the promontory, silhouetted against the fog, and he wasn't the gentle teacher from the first 2 nights. He was transfigured. I don't know how else to describe it. His clothes were radiating light, pure white light that cut through the fog like a blade. His face was shining like the sun. I literally couldn't look directly at it. And his eyes, God help me, his eyes were like flames, burning with an intensity that made me want to crawl into the rock and hide. This was Jesus in his glory, Jesus the judge, Jesus the king, and the entire landscape seemed to respond to his presence. The wind intensified into a shriek, the temperature dropped another 10 degrees in seconds, and the waves below crashed with such violence that water was being thrown completely over the cliff edge, drenching us both in ice-cold spray. Jonathan, son of man. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the storm like it was nothing, and there was a resonance to it, like multiple voices speaking in perfect harmony. Stand up. You need to see this. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't work. I was Peter on the Mount of Transfiguration, terrified and awestruck, unable to process what I was experiencing. Stand. And this time it was a command, and my body obeyed before my mind could register the decision. I was on my feet, trembling, probably hypothermic, definitely terrified. Jesus raised his hand, and the fog in front of us didn't just clear, it transformed. It became a screen, a window, and I was seeing... I don't know how to explain this. I was seeing multiple timelines, multiple realities, all at once. Past, present, future, all layered on top of each other. I showed you what my people are missing, Jesus said, his voice like thunder now. I showed you what they're becoming. Now I show you what's coming for those who refuse to put down the scroll and look up. The fog screen erupted with images, and they came so fast I could barely process them. I saw churches, thousands of them, filled with people, but every single person was looking down at their phones. The pastor was preaching, pouring his heart out, but no one was listening. They were all scrolling, and I watched as the presence of God, which had been hovering over the congregation like a cloud, slowly lifted and departed. The people didn't even notice. They just kept scrolling. I saw families sitting around dinner tables, everyone on their devices, and the table itself began to crack down the middle, a fissure forming, widening, until the family was physically separated, islands of isolation in the same room. I saw bedrooms where spouses lay next to each other, both scrolling, and a wall, an actual spiritual wall, was being built between them, brick by brick, with each hour of disconnected presence. I saw children trying to get their parents' attention, and when they were ignored, I watched demons, actual demons, not metaphorical ones, whispering lies into those children's ears. You don't matter, you're not important, you're not worth their time. And the lies took root, became beliefs, became identities. This is happening now, Jesus said, right now, in this moment, while you watch, while people scroll. Now watch what's coming. The images shifted, and what I saw next. God, I don't even want to write this, but I have to. I was commissioned to share everything, no matter how hard. I saw a date, March 15th, 2026, just 3 months from now, and I saw what looked like a spiritual earthquake. Not a physical earthquake, the ground wasn't shaking, but something in the spiritual realm was rupturing, breaking, shifting, and in that shift, there was a separation happening. People who had learned to hear God's voice, who had cultivated the ability to be present, who could recognize his promptings, they were being moved into position, positioned for something. I couldn't see what exactly, but it was significant. Kingdom assignments, divine appointments, moments of massive impact. But people who were still slaves to the scroll, who couldn't disconnect even for a minute, who had allowed the constant noise to deafen them to God's voice, they were being, I don't know if left behind is the right phrase because this wasn't the rapture. They were still there, still alive, still going through the motions, but they were spiritually powerless, disconnected, running on fumes. And when crisis came, and I saw crisis coming, waves of it, they had nothing, no oil in their lamps, no intimacy with God to draw from, no ability to hear his voice guiding them through the chaos. This generation is like the 5 foolish virgins, Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with grief. They have lamps, they have religion, theology, church attendance, Bible apps, but no oil, no intimacy, no presence. And when the bridegroom comes, when the moment arrives, they won't be ready, not because they weren't saved, but because they never learned to be still, never learned to listen, never learned to recognize my voice because they never gave me 1 minute of undistracted attention. The vision shifted again, and now I was seeing into homes, into lives, into the consequences of continued scrolling. I saw a man who had scrolled past 3 promptings from the Holy Spirit to change jobs, 3 clear promptings over 6 months, but he was always on his phone during the moments God was trying to speak, so he missed them. And I watched as his company collapsed, he lost everything, and he stood before God saying, "Oh, why didn't you warn me?" And God had to replay those 3 missed promptings, those 3 moments where divine guidance was offered but couldn't penetrate the scroll. I saw a woman who had ignored multiple promptings to reconcile with her sister. The Holy Spirit had tried to break through during a dozen different moments, times when her hands were free, her heart was soft, the moment was right, but she was always scrolling, always consuming, always distracted. And I watched as her sister died suddenly in a car accident, and the woman was left with permanent, crushing regret because she'd traded those divine promptings for TikTok videos she couldn't even remember watching. I saw a young man who had been called to ministry. God had been trying to download the vision for months, specific details about what he was supposed to build, who he was supposed to reach, how he was supposed to do it. But every time the download was ready to come, the young man was scrolling. And I watched as he reached 40 years old, working a job he hated, feeling empty and purposeless, and he cried out, "God, why didn't you give me a calling?" And God had to show him the hundreds of times he'd tried, the hundreds of moments that were sacrificed to the scroll. "Enough!" I screamed into the wind. "I can't see anymore. Please!" But Jesus didn't stop. His face was still blazing with light, still terrible in its glory, and his voice shook the ground. "You asked to be a messenger. You asked to be used. This is the cost. You must see it all. You must know the stakes, because when you share this message, people will mock you. They'll call you extreme, legalistic, fear-mongering. And you need to remember what you saw here. You need to remember that this isn't about rules. It's about relationship. It's not about religion. It's about rescue. I'm not trying to take away their phones. I'm trying to save their lives." The vision shifted one final time, and what I saw was so intense, so overwhelming, that I fell to my knees and wept. I saw the earth from above like I was seeing it from space, and I could see golden threads, the same ones Jesus had shown me the first night, connecting billions of people to heaven. And I watched as, one by one, threads were snapping, not because God was cutting them, but because the people on the other end had let them fray and weaken through months and years of distraction until finally they just broke. And when a thread broke, I saw what happened. That person was still alive, still functioning, still going to church, still saying the right words. But they were spiritually dead, running on memory and routine rather than living connection. And when the crisis came, and I saw crisis coming like a tsunami, they had no lifeline, no direct connection to the source. They were trying to survive a hurricane with a cell phone that had no signal. The separation isn't me judging them, Jesus said, and now his voice was quiet again, almost a whisper, but it carried more weight than the shouting. The separation is the natural consequence of their choice. They chose the scroll over stillness. They chose consumption over connection. They chose to be perpetually distracted rather than intentionally present. And now, when the moment comes that requires real faith, real intimacy, real ability to hear my voice in crisis, and they have nothing. The thread is broken. Not because I broke it, but because they neglected it. He knelt down beside me on the wet rock, and when he placed his hand on my shoulder, the blazing glory dimmed slightly, still radiant but bearable. Jonathan, I need you to understand something. I'm not angry with them. I'm heartbroken for them. I'm watching my children choose slavery over freedom. I'm watching them waste the precious gift of time on nothing. I'm watching them scroll past their destiny, and the worst part is they don't even know what they're losing because they've never experienced what true presence with me feels like. He lifted my chin so I was looking into his eyes, still blazing, but now I could see the tears. Jesus was weeping. Most of them have never given me one uninterrupted minute, not one. Their entire Christian life has been consumed on the run, prayed while distracted, scripture read while multitasking, worship sung while scrolling through social media. They've never once sat in pure silence and said, God, I'm here, fully here, no phone, no agenda, no distractions, just you and me. And because they've never done that, they don't know what they're missing. They think the dry, powerless religion they're experiencing is all there is. He stood and pulled me to my feet, and the storm was reaching a crescendo around us. The wind was screaming, the waves were shaking the cliff, and I realized something. This storm wasn't random. It was prophetic. It was showing me what was coming. A storm is coming to this generation, Jesus said, confirming my thought. Not just metaphorically, literal storms, economic collapse, political chaos, natural disasters, personal crises, and the only ones who will navigate it successfully are those who can hear my voice clearly, those who have cultivated intimacy, those who know how to be still and listen when everything around them is screaming. He walked to the edge of the cliff, and I followed, and he pointed down at the waves below, massive, chaotic, deadly. This is what's coming, chaos. And in chaos, you can't rely on programs or plans or strategies. You can only rely on real-time guidance from me, step-by-step direction. And that requires being able to hear my voice instantly, clearly, without having to detox from days of digital noise first. He turned to face me, and the full weight of his glory hit me again. So here's the message, the one you're going to share. Stop scrolling. Not eventually. Not when it's convenient. Not when you feel like it. Now. Because you're running out of time to learn this skill before you desperately need it. Give me 1 minute right now, one pure, undistracted minute, and let me start teaching you how to recognize my voice again. And then tomorrow, give me 2 minutes. The next day, 5 minutes. Work up to 30 minutes a day of pure presence, no phone, no distractions, just you and me, because that practice, that discipline of presence is going to save your life when the storm hits. Lightning flashed, and for a split second I saw the entire coastline illuminated, miles of cliffs and waves and raw, terrible beauty, and then darkness again, deeper than before. There's a reason I've brought you to this wild place, Jesus said. 3 nights on this cliff, in the cold, in the wind, in the danger, because I need you to understand. Following me isn't safe or comfortable or convenient. It's wild, it's raw, it requires full presence and full attention or you die. The domesticated, scrolling Christianity that's become normal, that's not what I called you to. I called you to adventure, to intimacy, to a relationship so real and vital that everything else fades in comparison. He placed both hands on my head, and I felt power flowing through me, literally felt it, like electricity, like fire, like wind, like all 3 at once. I'm commissioning you as a messenger of this word. The scroll must stop, or the generation will be lost. Not eternally lost. I'm not talking about salvation. I'm talking about missing their purpose, wasting their one life, being powerless when they need power most, being disconnected when connection is all that matters. I'm talking about reaching the end and realizing they spent 80 years as a spectator in their own life because they were always watching everyone else's highlight reel instead of living their own story. The power flowing through me intensified, and my whole body was shaking, and Jesus spoke with such authority that the wind itself seemed to pause to listen. 30 days from the night I first brought you here, that's January 10th, 2026, there will be a marker, a point of no return. Not for salvation, but for positioning. By that date, people need to have broken the addiction enough that they can consistently give me focused time. Those who have will be positioned for what comes next. Those who haven't will still be saved, but they'll miss the assignments. They'll be powerless in the crisis. They'll survive, but they won't thrive. They'll make it to heaven, but their purpose will die unfulfilled. He released me, and I collapsed onto the rock, every muscle trembling, tears streaming down my face, partially from the wind and spray, partially from the weight of what I'd just seen and heard. Today technically, since it's past 3 a.m., you'll share this message. Part 3, the hard part, the judgment part, the warning part, and people will resist it. They'll say you're being extreme, but Jonathan, he knelt beside me one more time. You've seen what's coming. You've seen the stakes. You can't unsee it, so you have to share it, no matter the cost. The first hint of pre-dawn light was touching the eastern horizon, and in that growing light I could see Jesus more clearly, and he looked exhausted. Not physically tired, but emotionally, spiritually depleted, like he'd just carried an impossible weight. Watching my people choose distraction over destiny is killing me all over again, he said quietly. Every day, billions of small choices to scroll instead of seek, to consume instead of commune, to watch instead of worship, and each choice is like another thorn in my head, another lash on my back, another nail in my hands, because I died to give them life, abundant, purposeful, powerful life, and they're trading it for absolutely nothing. He stood one last time. Tomorrow night, tonight, you rest. You don't come back here. You go home. You sleep. You process. You write. And then you share all of this, all 3 nights, exactly as it happened. Don't soften it. Don't make it more palatable. Don't worry about offending people. Just tell the truth. What about part 4? I asked. You said there would be 4 parts. Part 4 is the practical application, the specific 30-day challenge, the detailed steps, the hope mixed with urgency. But that comes after they've heard the warning. First, they need to see what they're running from. Then you show them what they're running toward. Jesus walked to the edge of the promontory, and without looking back, he said, I love them, Jonathan. I love them so much it's literally killing me to watch them waste their lives. So tell them, I'm not trying to take away their fun. I'm trying to give them their purpose. I'm not trying to add another rule. I'm trying to restore relationship. I'm not angry. I'm desperate because time is running out, and most of them don't even know what they're about to lose. And then he stepped off the cliff. I screamed and lunged forward, but he didn't fall. He just dissolved into the morning light, and where he'd been standing there was just the wind and the spray and the first golden rays of sunrise breaking through the storm clouds. I stayed on that cliff until full daylight, maybe 7 a.m., and I watched the storm break up and dissipate, watched the ocean slowly calm, watched the sun burn away the fog, and I understood. This was prophetic too. The storm is coming, but it won't last forever. On the other side of the chaos is clarity, beauty, purpose, but you have to navigate the storm to get there, and you can't navigate it if you're scrolling. When I finally made it back to my car, my phone was sitting on the dashboard. Wait, my phone? The one Jesus had thrown into the ocean 3 nights ago? I picked it up, and it powered on, and there was one text message from an unknown number. You'll need this to share the message, but notice, you didn't need it to hear from me. Jay. I broke down crying right there in the driver's seat. Even in his mercy and provision, he was teaching me. So here I am. It's December 13th, 2025, early afternoon. I've been writing for 6 hours straight, trying to capture everything I saw, everything I heard, everything Jesus showed me over those 3 nights. And now I have to ask you the hardest question. What are you going to do with this? Are you going to scroll past it like you scroll past everything else? Are you going to think, that's interesting, and then forget about it in 5 minutes? Are you going to dismiss it as too extreme, too intense, too much? Or are you going to let it wreck you the way it wrecked me? Because here's the reality. Everything Jesus showed me is true. It's happening right now. The threads are breaking. The divine appointments are being missed. The purposes are dying. The storm is building. And the separation, January 10th, 2026, is coming whether you believe it or not. You have 28 days from today. 28 days to break the addiction enough that you can give God consistent, focused time. 28 days to relearn how to hear his voice in stillness. 28 days to position yourself for what's coming instead of being caught powerless in the chaos. 28 days. Here's what I need you to do right now, not later, not after you finish scrolling, not when it's convenient. Right now. Put down your phone, close your laptop, turn off the screen, set a timer for 3 minutes, not 1 minute this time, 3 minutes. Sit in complete silence. No music, no podcast, no ambient noise app, just silence. Say out loud, God, I've been scrolling when I should have been seeking. I've been distracted when you've been trying to speak. I give you these 3 minutes. Show me what I'm missing. Show me what you've been trying to tell me. I'm here. I'm present. I'm listening. Then be quiet and listen. Don't fill the space with your own prayers or words. Just listen. Do this right now, before you read another word, before you scroll to the next post, before you check your notifications. Because if you can't do this, if you won't do this, then everything Jesus showed me is true about you. You're not just distracted. You're addicted. You're not just busy. You're enslaved. And you're about to scroll right past the most important warning you've ever received. So do it. 3 minutes, right now. I'll wait. If you actually did it, if you actually gave God 3 minutes, comment below and tell me what happened. Tell me what he showed you. Tell me what you heard, because I guarantee he showed up. He always does when we give him real presence. Tomorrow I'll share part 4, the practical application, the 30-day challenge, the specific steps to break free and position yourself for what's coming. But tonight I need you to sit with what you've read. Let it sink in. Let it convict you. Let it scare you if it needs to. Because the fear of missing your purpose should be greater than the fear of missing a notification. The storm is coming. The separation is coming. Your positioning depends on choices you make right now, today, in these next 28 days. Stop scrolling. Give him 3 minutes. Your life is about to shift, but only if you actually put down the phone and do it. I'm writing this final part from my home office, and I need to tell you something before we go any further. I'm terrified to share what I'm about to share. Not because it's complicated, it's actually shockingly simple. I'm terrified because simplicity exposes us. When the solution is complex, we can hide behind our inability to execute it. But when the solution is so simple a child could do it, we have no excuse. And that means if we don't do it, we have to face the truth. We didn't want to. It's been 3 days since that final encounter on the cliff. 3 days since Jesus showed me the judgment, the consequences, the separation that's coming. And in these 3 days, I've been living the challenge I'm about to give you, testing it, making sure it's actually doable, making sure I'm not asking you to do something I haven't done myself. And I'll tell you the truth, it's been the hardest 3 days of my adult life. Not because the challenge is difficult, it's not. It's hard because it's exposed just how deep my addiction goes, how enslaved I've become, how much of my identity and sense of worth I'd tied to the constant stream of notifications and validation. But it's also been the most transformative 3 days of my Christian life. And I've been a believer for over 20 years. 3 days, that's all it took for everything to start shifting. So let me give you the challenge. Let me share exactly what Jesus commissioned me to share, and then let me tell you what happened when I actually did it. Starting today, December 13th, 2025 for me, whatever date you're reading this for you, you're going to commit to 30 consecutive days of what I'm calling sacred stillness. And here's what that means. Every day for the next 30 days, you will give God 30 minutes of completely undistracted presence. That's it. That's the whole challenge. But before you think, oh, that's easy, let me break down exactly what this means. 30 minutes means no phone, not on silent, not face down next to you, not in your pocket, in a completely different room, no smartwatch, no fitness tracker, no device of any kind, no music, no podcast, no audiobook, no ambient noise app, no distractions, not in a coffee shop, not where your kids can interrupt you, not in a place where you'll be disturbed, just you, a Bible, a notebook, and God. Here's the structure Jesus gave me for these 30 minutes, minutes 1 to 5, silence and surrender. You sit in complete silence. You don't read. You don't pray out loud. You don't do anything. You just sit and breathe and acknowledge God's presence. And you say one thing, God, I'm here, fully here. No agenda, no distractions, just you and me. I surrender these 30 minutes completely to you. Do whatever you want with this time. Most of you won't make it past 3 minutes the first time you try this. Your mind will race. You'll think of 17 things you need to do. You'll feel anxious. You'll want to check your phone. That's withdrawal. That's what addiction feels like when it's being confronted. Push through it. Minutes 6 to 15, scripture reading, but different. You're going to read one chapter of the Bible, but here's the key. You're reading for encounter, not information. You're not trying to get through it. You're not checking it off a list. You're reading slowly, expectantly, asking the Holy Spirit to highlight something, a word, a phrase, a verse. And when something jumps out at you, and something will, you stop. You sit with it. You meditate on it. You ask God, what are you saying to me through this? How does this apply to my life right now? What do you want me to understand? If you only get through 3 verses in 10 minutes because one phrase arrested you and you spent 7 minutes meditating on it, that's perfect. That's the goal. Depth over distance. Minutes 16 to 25. Listening prayer. This is where most Christians fail because we've forgotten how to do this. Listening prayer isn't you talking at God for 10 minutes. It's you asking a question and then shutting up and listening for the answer. Here are the 4 questions Jesus told me to ask every day. God, what are you saying to me today? What are you trying to show me? Is there anyone you want me to reach out to? What am I missing? What am I scrolling past? You ask these questions out loud, and then you sit in silence with your notebook open, and you write down whatever comes. Don't filter it. Don't dismiss it as just your own thoughts. Write it down. Impressions, names, images, feelings, scripture references that pop into your mind, random thoughts that seem to come from nowhere. Most of it probably is from you, but some of it, maybe just one sentence, one name, one impression, will be from God, and that one thing will be worth the entire 30 minutes. Minutes 26 to 30, declaration and commitment. You close by praying this out loud. God, I declare that you are more important than any notification. You are more valuable than any scroll. You are more worthy of my attention than any screen. Today, I commit to choosing presence over distraction. I commit to giving you priority access to my time and attention. I commit to being available for divine appointments instead of being buried in my device. Help me recognize your voice throughout this day. Help me obey the promptings I receive. And when I'm tempted to waste hours scrolling, remind me of what I'm trading it for. In Jesus' name, amen. And then you write down one commitment for the day. Today I will obey God by, and you fill in whatever he showed you during your listening time. That's it. That's the challenge. 30 days, 30 minutes a day, structured exactly like that. And I know what you're thinking. I don't have 30 minutes. Yes, you do. You have the same 24 hours everyone else has. The question is, what are you doing with them? Let me ask you this. How many hours did you spend on your phone yesterday? Check your screen time. I'll wait. Whatever that number is, you're telling me you can't find 30 minutes for God? You can find 7 hours for TikTok, but not 30 minutes for the one who created you? You can scroll for 3 hours, but you can't sit still for 30 minutes? See what I mean about simplicity exposing us? The issue isn't time. The issue is priority, and the deeper issue is addiction. You're enslaved, and you don't even realize it because the cage is entertaining. Let me tell you what these last 3 days have been like, because I want you to know exactly what to expect. Day 1, December 11th, morning after the first cliff encounter. I sat down for my 30 minutes, and I made it exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds before I instinctively reached for my phone, except it wasn't there. It was at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean at that point, but my hand still reached for my pocket. Muscle memory, addiction. I forced myself to sit still, and my mind was chaos. I thought about emails I needed to send, projects I needed to complete, people I needed to call. My leg was bouncing. My jaw was clenched. I realized I had absolutely no idea how to just be still. The scripture reading was better. I read Psalm 46, and when I got to verse 10, be still and know that I am God, I swear it hit me like a physical blow. How could I know God if I was never still? How could I hear him if I never created silence? During the listening prayer, I heard nothing for the first 8 minutes. Just my own anxious thoughts bouncing around. But in the 9th minute, a name popped into my head. Marcus, a guy I'd worked with on The Chosen 2 years ago. We'd lost touch, and with the name came a strong impression. He needs to hear from you today. I almost dismissed it, almost talked myself out of it. But I'd just spent 3 nights receiving visions from Jesus. Who was I to dismiss a prompting? After my 30 minutes, I borrowed my wife's phone and called Marcus. He answered on the first ring, and before I could say anything, he said, Jonathan, how did you... I was literally just praying. I was just asking God if he still sees me, if he still cares. And you called. He'd lost his job. His marriage was falling apart. He'd been contemplating ending his life. And my phone call, the one I almost dismissed, gave him hope, reminded him he wasn't forgotten. One 30-minute session, one prompted name, one life possibly saved. Day 2, December 12th, morning after the second cliff encounter. The 30 minutes were slightly easier. I only reached for my phantom phone twice. The silence still felt uncomfortable, but less terrifying, more expectant, like I was waiting for something instead of just enduring emptiness. I read James 4 and verse 8 arrested me. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. I'd always read that as God making a promise. If you pursue him, he'll respond. But this time I heard it differently. He's always near, always available. The question is, am I drawing near? Am I creating space for him to draw near to me? Or am I keeping him at arm's length with constant distraction? During listening prayer, I got an impression about my daughter. She needs you to see her, really see her, not just glance at her while you're doing something else, see her. When my 30 minutes were done, I went and found her. She was coloring in her room, and I sat down next to her. No phone, no agenda, no just 5 minutes. And I asked her about her picture. And for the next 45 minutes, she told me elaborate stories about every character she'd drawn, and I was fully present for all of it. And at one point, she stopped coloring, looked up at me with these huge eyes, and said, "Daddy, I like when you really look at me." I started crying right there on her bedroom floor, because I realized she'd been starved for my presence. I'd been physically there, but emotionally and mentally I'd been in my phone. And she knew it. Kids always know. That 45 minutes with my daughter was more important than anything I could have accomplished on social media. But I would have missed it if I hadn't done my 30 minutes that morning and received that prompting. Day 3, December 13th, morning after the third cliff encounter. This morning's 30 minutes felt different. I still had to fight the urge to grab my phone, but the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt pregnant with possibility, like anything could happen in that space. I read 1 Kings 19, the story of Elijah hearing God's voice, not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but in the still small voice, or as some translations put it, the sound of sheer silence. And it hit me. I'd been looking for God in the spectacular, in the loud, in the obvious. But he speaks in the stillness, and if my life never has stillness, I'll never hear him. Not because he's not speaking, but because I've drowned him out with noise. During listening prayer, I got the vision for how to structure this final part, every detail of the 30-day challenge, the exact words for the closing prayer, the specific breakdown of the 30 minutes, all of it downloaded in about 3 minutes of listening. I've spent more than 1,000 hours studying theology, reading commentaries, listening to sermons, and I got more clarity in 3 minutes of listening than in all those hours combined. Not because study isn't valuable, it is, but because information without encounter is just data. I needed the encounter, and encounter requires presence. Okay, let's get into the specifics, because I know you have questions. When should I do my 30 minutes? Jesus was specific about this. Do it first thing in the morning, before you look at your phone, before you check email or social media or news, before you do anything else. Because if you don't do it first, you won't do it at all. Something will come up. The day will get away from you. You'll be too tired by evening. Set your alarm 30 minutes earlier than usual. Yes, that means less sleep. Yes, it will be hard at first, but you're about to discover that 30 minutes with God gives you more energy than an extra hour of sleep ever could. What if I have young kids who wake me up? Then you do it before they wake up, or during their nap, or you get your spouse to watch them for 30 minutes. Where there's a will, there's a way. And if you truly can't find 30 consecutive minutes, like you're a single parent with an infant who needs constant care, then break it into 3 10-minute sessions. It's not ideal, but God honors the effort. What if I fall asleep during the silence? Then you were probably exhausted and needed the rest more than you realized. Don't beat yourself up. Try again tomorrow. But also, examine your schedule. If you're so exhausted that you can't stay awake for 5 minutes of silence, something in your life is unsustainable and needs to change. What if I don't hear anything during listening prayer? You probably are hearing something, but you're dismissing it as just your thoughts. Write it down anyway. Over time, you'll learn to distinguish between your own mind chatter and God's voice. But you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is writing down everything and asking God to confirm what's from Him. Also, sometimes the answer is just His presence. Sometimes He doesn't give you specific direction. He just wants you to experience Him being with you. That's enough. Presence is the goal, not productivity. What if I miss a day? Then you don't get to day 30. You start over at day 1. This isn't me being legalistic. This is about building a habit and breaking an addiction. You need 30 consecutive days to rewire your brain, to establish new patterns, to break the old ones. If you miss a day, your count resets. Make it non-negotiable. Can I use a Bible app on my phone? No. Use a physical Bible. I know it's less convenient. I know your phone has 17 translations and study notes and highlighting features, but the second you pick up your phone, you're one swipe away from falling back into the scroll. Get a physical Bible. Write notes in the margins. Underline things. Make it tactile and real. What about worship music during the 30 minutes? Not during the silence, scripture reading, or listening prayer portions. If you want to play worship music during your final 5 minutes of declaration and commitment, that's fine. But the first 25 minutes need to be screen-free and sound-free, except your own voice. We've become so dependent on background noise that we've forgotten how to encounter God in silence. Silence is where He speaks loudest. Remember, Jesus said, January 10th, 2026 is the marker. That's 28 days from today, December 13th, 2025. I don't know exactly what happens on that date. I don't know if it's a physical event or a spiritual shifting or a change in the atmosphere, but I know He was clear. That's the deadline for getting positioned. If you start today and do 30 consecutive days, you'll finish on January 11th, 2026, one day past the deadline. That's cutting it close. If you miss even one day, you won't make it. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Start today, not tomorrow, not Monday, not after the holidays. Today, right now. As soon as you finish reading this, set down your device and do your first 30 minutes. And here's the commitment I need you to make in the comments. I commit to 30 consecutive days of sacred stillness, starting today's date. I will give God 30 minutes of undistracted presence every day, no matter what. I will not touch my phone during this time. I will learn to hear His voice in the silence. I position myself for what's coming on January 10th, 2026. Post that comment right now, because when you make a public commitment, you're more likely to keep it. And when you comment, you become part of a community of people who are doing this together. I'll be posting updates every 3 days. December 16th, 19th, 22nd, 25th, 28th, 31st, January 3rd, 6th, and 9th. In each update, I'll share what God is showing me during my 30 minutes, testimonies from people who are doing the challenge, and encouragement for those who are struggling. And on January 10th, I'm going to share what Jesus reveals about what's next, because I believe I know He's going to show me more. He didn't bring me to that cliff, show me 3 nights of visions, and commission me as a messenger just to leave the story unfinished. Something is happening on January 10th, something significant, and those who have spent the previous 30 days learning to hear His voice will know exactly what to do. Those who haven't, won't. I need to give you both, because a warning without hope is just fear, and hope without warning is just naivety. The warning: if you don't do this, if you read all 4 parts of this message and then scroll away and change nothing, you will miss your divine positioning. You will miss the assignments God has prepared for you. You will miss the breakthrough that was supposed to come. You will miss the warnings He's trying to give you about what's coming in your personal life. You will reach the end of your life and realize you traded your purpose for scrolling. You traded intimacy for information. You traded presence for performance. And God will still love you. You'll still go to heaven if you're saved. But you will have missed the abundant life Jesus died to give you. You will have wasted your one shot at this particular existence. And that realization, when it comes, will be devastating. I'm not trying to manipulate you with fear. I'm trying to wake you up with truth, because Jesus showed me what's coming for those who refuse to disconnect, and I love you too much to let you scroll into that reality without warning you. The hope. If you do this, if you commit to these 30 days, if you actually give God sacred stillness, if you learn to hear His voice again, everything changes. Your relationships heal. Your purpose becomes clear. Your faith becomes real instead of theoretical. You start experiencing God instead of just consuming content about God. You'll miss fewer divine appointments because you'll be tuned in to His voice. You'll make better decisions because you're getting real-time guidance. You'll have peace in chaos because you've learned to access His presence regardless of circumstances. And when January 10th comes, when whatever's about to happen happens, you'll be ready. You'll be positioned. You'll be equipped, not because you're special or super spiritual, but because you learn to be still and listen. This is the life Jesus died to give you: abundant, purposeful, connected, powerful. But it starts with one decision. Will you stop scrolling and give him 30 minutes? I'm sitting here at my desk, looking out the window at the mountains behind my house, and I'm overwhelmed, not just by what Jesus showed me on that cliff, but by the responsibility of sharing it accurately, by the weight of knowing that some of you will do this, and your lives will transform, and some of you won't, and you'll miss it entirely. And I can't make you do it. I can't force conviction. I can only share what I saw, what I heard, what Jesus commissioned me to share, and trust that the Holy Spirit will do the rest. But I'll tell you this, I'm doing it, all 30 days, no exceptions, no excuses, because I saw what happens to people who keep scrolling, and I saw what happens to people who learn to be still, and there's no comparison. I'm choosing presence. I'm choosing intimacy. I'm choosing to be positioned for what's coming instead of being left powerless in the chaos. And I'm inviting you to join me, not because I need the company, though there is power in community, but because I know what's waiting for you on the other side of these 30 days, and I want you to experience it. I want you to hear God's voice with clarity you haven't had in years. I want you to discover the purpose you've been scrolling past. I want you to be ready for what's coming on January 10th. So here's my final ask. Close this device after you finish reading. Don't check one more thing. Don't scroll to one more post. Don't look at one more notification. Get your physical Bible and a notebook. Set a timer for 30 minutes and do it. Do the whole structure I laid out: silence, scripture, listening, declaration. Give God 30 minutes right now, and then come back and comment, I did day 1. Here's what happened. Because I promise you on everything I saw on that cliff, if you give him 30 minutes of real presence, he will show up, he will speak, something will shift. Your life is about to change. The question is, will you let it? Will you stop scrolling? Will you give him 30 minutes? Will you position yourself for what's coming? Or will you scroll past this message like you scroll past everything else, and on January 11th, realize you missed it? The choice is yours. But choose quickly. The clock is ticking. 28 days left. Stop scrolling. Give him 30 minutes. Your life is about to shift. I love you. Jesus loves you. And I'll see you in the comments and in the updates. Now go. Close this device. Do your first 30 minutes. Today is day 1. Let's do this together. Jonathan. If you're reading this after January 10th, 2026, it's not too late. The 30-day challenge still works. You might have missed the positioning for whatever happened on that date, but you haven't missed your purpose. Start today. Give him 30 days. Your breakthrough is still waiting in the stillness. To everyone who commits to this and completes all 30 days, on January 11th, I'm going to release a special video with what Jesus showed me on the 10th, but it will only be visible to those who have been commenting their daily updates. Your consistency will be rewarded. Don't miss it. Now go. Close the device. Start your first 30 minutes. The life you've been praying for is waiting in the presence you've been avoiding. Stop scrolling. Start seeking. 28 days. Let's go.